welcome to Art Day Wednesday. My name is Angela.
I'm Leandra.
And today we're going to learn about the Shibori art dyeing technique and make our own Shibori Dyed Handkerchiefs. Shibori is a Japanese style of dyeing technique. It can get very involved. So you can include stitching, folding, resists, or more simple with what we're going to do today with just resists. And a resist in an art technique means basically exactly what it sounds like. Something is used to resist the paint or resist the dye on the medium that you're using. So today we're doing handkerchiefs, and our resist is going to be a cardboard resist. So we're going to use these. They'll be attached to our handkerchiefs and it's going to resist the dye. So the final product will come out similar to this, where the dye is dyeing the fabric, and you can see these white elements is where the cardboard blocked the dye, resisted it going into the handkerchiefs. So a couple things to go over. We'll go over materials and kind of best practices. So in the fabric that you're going to use today, you want a natural blend fabric. We're using cotton handkerchiefs, but you typically want a natural, so that could be like linen, cotton, something like that. We're using a synthetic dye, so in dye, you can also use natural dyes, which is derived from plant-based materials, or a synthetic dye. We're using the RIT brand today, but you can use whatever brand you want. This is very similar if you've done tie-dye before. So it's non-toxic. If you get it on your hands, it will stain you, but you can wash it off. It's okay. If you get it on any of your clothes, it most likely will stain that as well. So be very careful. Wear some old fabric or an apron, but it will not dye synthetic fabric. So if you're trying this and you have a synthetic handkerchief or synthetic piece of cloth, it will not dye it. So make sure when you're choosing your dye, choosing your fabric, that what you're using matches up. You can see it all in the back, kind of best practices there as well. There's also techniques with whatever dye you choose if you need to use a heating element. So if you need to heat the water that you're doing, or you just need to leave it in there for a long time. So make sure you look out for that. We're just doing the time element. We're gonna stick it in a bucket with our dye and just let it sit for a long time. And so since this is a natural cotton fiber, it's going to absorb that dye. Also best practices, we'll go over this a little bit at the end. Anytime you dye a fabric, if you're gonna wash it by itself, or you might need to use a setting agent. It will bleed for the first couple of washes. So if you're gonna wash it, stick it in your washing machine with like an old rag or something, so it's gonna absorb that extra dye, but don't wash it with anything that you don't want that color on. Today we're gonna use the indigo color dye, but if you're using a natural dye, you can use actual indigo. We're just not doing that today. Like I said, we're using cardboard. You could also use Popsicle Sticks as your resist, and that would come out a little bit more like this. You can clearly see the popsicle stick motif coming through. Just a little different elements. You don't have to use square or rectangular cardboard. You can use a triangle, whatever piece or whatever design you want to use. You're also going to need some gloves. Like I said, this dye will stain you, so be careful with that. Something to stir the handkerchiefs in the bucket, whatever you're using. We're going to use these plastic tongs. Also talking about our bucket, we just have a typical plastic bucket. If you're doing this in your sink, make sure it's a metal sink. It will stain if you have like a porcelain sink or something like that. Or if you're using like a pot, I would use a metal pot. And if you have a pot that you're not going to use that often or just want to use for dyeing, that's a good call too. You need some rubber bands, and if you want to, you can also use binder clips to help clip your resist over your handkerchiefs. And we'll get started on techniques.
Okay, so now we're gonna fold our handkerchiefs in a accordion-like. So back and forth. Fold it over again. I'm gonna fold it another time. We're gonna get our cardboard pieces. We actually get two, one from the front and one from the back. It should be in the form of a sandwich. I'm gonna grab a couple of rubber bands so they can secure our cardboard pieces. It should look in this form.
Okay, So now that we've done the standard cardboard resist with the cardboard sandwich, I'm going to show you how you could also use popsicle sticks and then how you can use binder clips. So on this one we have the same handkerchief that we used earlier. Instead of these larger kind of 3-inch folds that Leandra showed you earlier, I'm going to fold this one first just into thirds. So kind of how you would fold a letter to send out, to make sure it wants to fight me because it was already folded, so I'm just going to make sure they're as equal as I can, like this. And then you can see going this way, it's similar to the size of the popsicle stick, and we're using one of the wider popsicle sticks that's a little bit longer than kind of the standard small one. So I'm going to take it on the outside. This is going to be my first fold. Hold it like this, and I'm going to accordion fold going down. So just like Leandra was doing, but a little tighter folds, like this. And I'm just using that popsicle stick as my guide as I fold. So now I have it kind of the same, and then popsicle stick sandwich on both sides. There's one here, and then one on the back, like this. And I'm gonna use rubber bands for this one, and I'm gonna put them pretty tight in 2 areas. So there was one. Squish this back in to make sure it's all underneath as much as possible. The popsicle stick like I want. It's okay if your folds get a little bit wonky. Second rubber band. I'm trying to put these similar distances just because this is going to show up as well. Now for this one, anything that's on the outside and these edges is going to pick up the dye darker than anything that's in the middle. So you can see on this one, for example, so we have the darker edges that kind of stuck out, and then we have the popsicle sticks kind of making that resist. So it's going to have variations of dye just based on how it's folded. So you have a darker side here, so this was on the outside, and then more of the inside here. Okay, so there's another one that we can put into our dye. And now I'm going to show you how to do, if you want to use binder clips. Now binder clips, they are metal, so every now and then you might get a little bit of rust from some of these, but it's okay. It doesn't show up too bad. I can show you on this one, for example. You get a little bit of color from the binder clips. It's very faint, just around those edges, but it should be okay. Okay. So I'm going to do a similar fold for this one. I'm going to fold it in. And then, since I'm doing binder clips, I can kind of make this one however I want. So I think I'm gonna go this way. Just keep folding it smaller and smaller. And I'm gonna use these binder clips to hold it in here. Now these binder clips will show up, so you will get kind of this design on here. But it'll still make a really cute design, and it'll act like a nice resist. So what I'm doing right now is I'm spacing them out. Since this design is going to show up, I want kind of equal distance here to here, and then in here. And I alternated them just so we can kind of get that alternating pattern in our die. Okay, let's get our die ready.